brutal murder and arrest in Pattaya.
Adam was a post-op transgender. Adam was a post-op transgender. Was brutally killed by Mr. Tong Yong Fu.
So less than 1 week ago, there was probably the most gruesome murder in the last decade or so reported in Pattaya, Thailand. Now, if you're not familiar with what actually went down, I'm going to break it down on the details that we were given. Now, what we're going to try to figure out at the end of this is, was this a random psychopathic murderer that we have on the loose? And once again, like one of my subscribers said, we're not sending our best when it comes to Thailand. Or is this a bigger situation or operation that we should be wary of? So stick around. I'm going to break it down the best that I can and hopefully get something out of it. So hopefully you guys appreciate the new camera angle and also the new setup I got going on. Hopefully it's successful and you enjoy this viewpoint. So now when it comes to an investigation, I'm a retired 20-year law enforcement official. I've seen my share of horrific things, anywhere from accident investigations, homicides, etc. So now when it comes to this case, the best way to delineate what may have happened, because in my opinion, and also you have to look at it like this from a law enforcement perspective, all the details you are not privy to. So that's number one. But let's try to do it like this. Who's the subject? Or the person who allegedly, of course, committed the crime. So we have a Chinese national, early 40s. Once again, the details from what I understand, and like I said, sometimes the source, who knows, right, is earlier that day, went to a hardware/convenience store and bought tools that eventually would be used to dismember a human being. But then on the flip side of the coin, where the details get a little murky, allegedly there was a scissor used to basically remove organs and mutilate a body. So now, I'm a guy who knows a little bit about tools. You would have to have the strength of 100 men or one gorilla to take a scissor, I don't care what kind of scissor, maybe like a Fisker, and basically open up and cut through bones, organs, etc. So right away we start to figure out that some parts of the story right off the bat are not making sense. So let's also talk about, when it comes to the subject, what else we got going on. So now regarding this Chinese national, this Asian gentleman, he basically was communicating, I'm assuming on some type of app, with the victim, who was, I believe, a post-operative transgender. Not that that matters, but once again, details are details. And sometimes that could speak to motive, either in the beginning of an investigation or somewhere throughout. So talks were in play. They decided to meet. A dollar amount was negotiated. And I believe the dollar amount translates, for my American viewers, to around 200 or 250 US dollars. So now, if you understand, obviously I'm a man of the cloth, I don't really understand pricing, but from what people have told me, that that's a very high price, and we would consider that this rate that allegedly he said he paid was for an overnight stay. So, regarding the victim, we got communication, we got premeditation. Okay, so now what we do is cut to the chase. Allegedly, they met on Beach Road and they came back to the hotel. Okay? This guy had a hotel, they came back. His story, now once again, his story seems very odd. If you're not familiar, that's why I'm doing this, is that he said he paid. They were going to have adult activity. She refused, which led to a struggle because he wanted half of the money back, etc. So there was a event where there was an argument / altercation where he puts a knee on the neck, pins her down, ends up in a strangle, and then becomes DOA. Okay? So now at this point, the subject or the perpetrator decides, this is his story, that since he was a welder back home, that he was curious and basically started to dismember the body and remove said organs. Now, what's curious is that some of the details that you get, some of the organs were missing, or one of the organs was missing, and there was basically organs placed on the counter, and then after this was done, allegedly with a scissor or hardware tools, this guy went to sleep like nothing ever happened. And then, fast forward, dead in the hotel room, takes her phone. Remember, the details matter on trying to figure out what we have or what we can, like what box we're throwing this into, is takes the phone somehow, some way, and great job regarding Thai law enforcement, is that they nab him at Savinaboom Airport. Okay, so in Thailand, you know, the big one is BKK, and then there's DMK, and then there's a couple of others. So they caught him at a pretty big airport before he was trying to exfiltrate, you know, after the crime. But let's also talk about mindset, because we're still on the subject. So just as we try to flesh this out, what we don't have, and this is where I say that we're not really able to fill in the blanks per se, because no matter where you go, obviously in New York or other big cities, I don't know the closed circuit television or the capability that is out here in Thailand in said location. So the thing is that if allegedly organs were removed and some are missing, there's two things that could have happened. There's an accomplice who picked up the organ, or something that maybe is an urban legend, but from I spoke to the Thai locals out here before I did this piece, is that certain cultures are known to eat organs or eat basically a form of cannibalism that allegedly will give them strength, and that's why they do it. So it's either it was eaten or it was taken. So that means there was a secondary member or a team, which would allude to that maybe it was an operation of organ trafficking, which has happened in the Golden Triangle regarding the map. So now that we're starting to get full scope of the situation or the crime and who the subject was, let's talk about the victim. The victim, and if you know anything about Thailand, and a guy actually was telling me, actually an expat, and I can't regurgitate all 10, but at the top of the hierarchy or the list of what's important, money is number one. So a lot of people, male or female, go to tourist hotspots and look to make money however they can. And that was what this young person, I believe of 25, was doing. And she happened to be a provider, allegedly, of adult entertainment, right? So, hold on 1 second. So, that's, in a nutshell, not to basically, I don't know much about this person, but she was working, okay? She was a sex worker, allegedly. So now, let's go back, because people will debate this, and I'm here to kind of maybe lend a little bit more of an expert opinion. Was the victim a professional in some sorts? I would have to see the crime scene, and we're going to get to Thai law in a little bit, is that where I say he's not a professional is that if your job in this big operation, allegedly, if there was one, is to do what you did, harvest, you're going to take the person's phone. I mean, that is a huge mistake. It's a huge, like, that leads me to believe that it's amateur night. But you never know. People make mistakes. People don't think. He might have been greedy and said, you know what? I could get 500 for this phone. You never know the mindset. He's a guy who just cut up a body, right? So obviously not the most normal person in the world. So now what I say is that why, like I said, I haven't seen certain things, and I haven't seen this what this crime scene looked like. But you kind of have to know what you're doing to a certain degree. It's kind of like if you ever went deer hunting. You think it's an easy thing to kind of, you know, capture the correct way to capture venison off a deer and basically, you know, remove this and do that. You need some experience. So either this guy, as we start to get into theory or concepts, is a serial killer. And he said, you know what? Today's the day. Let me get some tools. No one's going to miss this girl. And that's pretty much what it would be. And also, we talk about amateur night. You just, let's say it was part of a Oregon operation where they harvest. You're telling me that you're going to go to sleep right after you do that? Once again, amateur night. So all I could say is that obviously this is conjecture, and I'm offering, you know, a mature opinion when it comes to investigations. Obviously, it's something I did for a long time. You know, I was part of a unit called Lambs that was based out of Gramercy, and there was a lot of interesting things that we had to investigate. You know, basically whatever came up on the sheet, you know, one of the team members would look to do a thorough investigation. So now, as I start to close this a little bit, I don't believe this was, like I said, we don't have all the information. But I believe this is someone. And once again, in Thailand, if you've ever been, there's a lot of interesting characters that are walking the street. Some are nefarious in nature, some are just down here for a good time, a lot of knuckleheads, etc. But also what I find to be strange, and I'm not here to judge the law of Thailand, I'm not here to do that, but I think it's something that when it comes to laws or policy or protocol, certain times it needs to be revisited, and you have to say, you know what, I know this is an older law, but why are we doing this? It's good to question and have a conversation. So if you don't know, what they do in Thai law, and this was interesting to me, is they take the subject back to the scene of the crime. So he could do a reenactment, which could be reasonable, but let me explain a little bit more about crime scenes, because if I could get it up, I'll show you a picture. Is that they bring the guy back to the same room. So now, in my opinion, if this is a crime scene, this is a sealed room for an indeterminate amount of time until we figure out exactly what happened here. But it looks like the room that they had was completely sterilized, completely cleansed, that basically would wash away any evidence. So now, what's curious or odd is the family of the victim is allowed to listen. And like I said, there was like 10 people in one room listening to the reenactment, which must have been horrifying. And then, I mean, forget about disturbing crime scenes. Do you think someone's not going to try to assault or kill someone that just killed your family member? Obviously, there's not really guns that are prevalent out here, but that would never happen in New York or anywhere else. It just wouldn't. It just doesn't, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. So just as a recommendation, policies and protocols need to be revisited, because sometimes policies are 100 to 130 years, whatever the case is, and it needs to be looked at. And just that, like I said, as a recommendation, if someone as an outsider looking in, that might be one of them. Okay, how this is handled. So, in closing, my opinion, from what I have and what I know, not the best people walking around here. This is a place where people are transient. There's, like I said, there's a red light district. There's people that may not be missed. Not saying they won't be missed forever, but if they went off the grid for 2 weeks or a month, people may be like, well, they're working, So, my opinion, once again, I believe it's a mature one. This is somebody, premeditated psychopath, that wanted to do this to the body. I don't think it was his first rodeo. And if they investigate further via advanced interviewing, they should find that out. So coffee and juice, hopefully got something out of it. Sometimes I let a couple of days go by, just I get more information, and then we could do better. All right? So have a good day, and once again, protect yourself, be safe, and be smart about what you're doing and where you're going. We'll talk soon.